to be notified.
Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board at the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2024 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December of 2023, and by filing said notice in the office of the
Gripe. Mr. Daffis,
Here.
Mr. DeLuca,
Here.
Engel.
Here.
Mayor Adams.
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7A provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting. And whereas desire the governing body to comply with the provisions of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee, Township Maplewood does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observations of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Ms. Engel,
Yes.
Mayor Adams.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, we're done with all the public notice, right?
Correct.
So I'd like to ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and stay standing for a moment of silence afterwards. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like everyone to take a moment of silence for the passing of Mrs. Willie Joyce Howard. She is the mother of Deputy Mayor Kripe. And Deputy Mayor Kripe has been down in Florida for quite the last few weeks, and this sad time for her and her family. So if you will, please. Thank you. So welcome everyone to the Tuesday, September 17th, 2024 meeting of the Township Committee of Maplewood. Tonight we have one proclamation for National Hispanic Heritage Month. For boards and committees, we have an appointment to the Historic Preservation Commission. Then we will have a presentation by architect Margaret Hickey, Historic Preservation Specialist, who will present a plan for the Woodland Preservation Plan. Then we will have public comment for agenda items only. After that, we have no ordinances on final passage. We have one ordinance on for introduction, a revision to the demolition ordinance that we discussed at the last meeting. Then we have reports from departments, filming waiver permit request. Then we have administrative reports from Administrator Weary, Township Attorney Credidio, and Township Clerk Fritzen. Reports from elected officials will start with Committee Member Engel, then Committee Member DeLuca, Committee Member Daffis, and I go last. We have a few items for discussion tonight. The top condominium providing a no parking area for safety, something we've been discussing for the last month or so. We have another that'll be led by Mr. DeLuca, as well the stormwater utility establishment that will be led by Mr. DeLuca, and one more for affordable housing partnership with Ingerman. Then we have another discussion item for food truck permit changes. Then we will have the consent agenda. And after that, we have public comments subject on any subject matter. And so right now we move to proclamations, and I will present the proclamation for National Hispanic Heritage Month. Whereas beginning in 1968, the celebration of Hispanic heritage in America began as a week and was expanded to a month in 1988. And whereas every year Hispanic Heritage Month takes place from September 15th to October 15th to recognize and celebrate the contributions, cultures, and histories of the American Hispanic and Latino community. Whereas alongside celebrating the accomplishments of the American Hispanic and Latino community, the month also marks the independence of numerous Latin American countries from Mexico, Chile, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. And whereas the United States has a population comprised of 19% or over 63 million people who identify as Hispanic or Latino. And whereas while we celebrate the past, we must also uplift what in the present is making history, like Hackensack's Hesley Rivera, who recently won a gold medal in gymnastics at this year's Olympics. Also, Nellie Pooh, who, if elected to November's general election, will become the first Hispanic woman elected to Congress from New Jersey. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Nancy Adams, Mayor of the Township of Maplewood, on behalf of the Maplewood Township Committee, proclaim that September is Hispanic Heritage Month. Together with the rest of the Township Committee, I advocate all citizens learn about the culture, the history, and those in our own community. For as with all cultures, those who are Latin and Hispanic aren't a monolith, and each holds a rich and unique story to tell. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move with that to boards and committees. We have an Historic Preservation Commission appointee, Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you. We do have an appointee. I don't see him in the audience here. If you could check on Zoom. Mr. McCreer? No? Okay. So I would suggest we table this until we can reach out. I can reach out to him and see if we can get.
Okay,
Okay.
was he intending to come?
We did send him the information. I just don't know if he didn't respond, right?
He did not respond.
So let's,
So you want to just?
yeah, I just want to table it. Yes, yes,
Make sure he really wants it.
yes.
Okay, fair enough. All right, then we'll move to the presentation. So Margaret, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the microphone, hold it super close. So Margaret Hickey is an architect with historic preservation specialty from Connolly and Hickey Historical Architects. And I met you years ago through the Main Street program. So welcome to our meeting. And I know you've worked hard on all this, so thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to review the historic preservation plan that we prepared. This plan was funded with, by a grant, 100% funded through the CLG program, administered by the New Jersey Historic Preservation Office. And there's two primary purposes. One was sort of to give you a good comprehensive idea of the conditions of the building and what the needs are, and hopefully be able to prioritize those and give you some associated costs. But then, since the building does have needs and you may be wanting to go look for competitive bricks and mortar grants, historic preservation grants, this is a critical first step towards obtaining those grants, because the more you kind of know upfront of what you're doing, the more competitive you are. And at statewide level, you're competing against 21 other counties.
Right.
This past year's applications were 100, and I think it was like 108 grant applications for various different programs, but that's still a pretty high number. And they have between 10 and $15 million to give out every year. So you do want to be as competitive as possible if that's a route you want to take. So this is kind of one of the first major steps in that grant process.
Okay.
So I'm really bad at the slide thing. So I'm just going to go through, maybe I could, I was supposed to talk about this is just a little brief chronology of construction. One of the things in the preservation plan that we do, even though the focus is really on giving you conditions, we have to understand the history and chronology of the building in order to be able to frame our recommendations so that we're not doing anything adverse to the historic fabric. So a history, chronology of construction, and then just slip through some of the historic photographs. I do have a couple of notes. So like I said, we look at the history for the context, but with the intent to give us a framework into which to work with that we were working. But the other thing that I want to point out is that, you know, preservation is kind of getting away from museum as being the sole, you know, the sole thing we do.
Mhm.
And so the other part of the project or your building is, you could stop there. The other part of the other part is the use of the building. So we did also look at the use of the building, and I also wanted to say that when it comes to the grants, you're also more competitive when you have a broader community use. Not to say that museums still aren't funded, but the state and other funding agencies are looking for that more engagement
Okay.
rather than that static, you know, museum, which has a harder draw for the public these days. So, so you fit right into that category.
Yeah.
In terms of the visioning. But in addition to that, even though you're not going to be a museum, the funding agencies, New Jersey Historic Preservation Office, also want you still to be sensitive to the historic fabric. So I think that's why I kind of settled on this photograph, because it really shows a lot of the features that have kind of been lost under the aluminum siding that is there currently. So that might be one of the objectives, or that is one of the objectives in the framework of the recommendations, is to look at those features that could be restored. We may not restore everything, or it may say, you'd say, look, we give you this long-term plan, but you know, there's a lot of money. You may not get to everything, but it's at least in the plan for you to be able to say, okay, we may
Right.
get to that, but it might be 15 years.
Mr. Weary, can you go back a couple pictures to show the inside where the windows she was just talking about? Yeah, right there. So right now, those are all painted over with brown paint and aren't used, and so we're missing a big opportunity.
What's really interesting, that was painted over, but in the war for the blackouts. So
Oh, interesting.
That's what we read in the history. So that's.
Yeah. The side.
We have those chairs next door. Believe it or not, they're next door.
Really?
Yeah.
Next
They're
door.
in a closet next door.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the wooden chairs. Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah.
We don't have that many.
not as many.
I'm going to return to this space eventually.
Yeah, that's such
Right,
a fabulous picture.
You can end up on, oh, the other thing I wanted to point out is that the building really has not changed a lot since it
Mhm.
was originally constructed. So it really does retain a high level of integrity, which makes our lives easier, to be honest, when it comes to making recommendations. So, all right, so I'm just gonna just quickly go through the slides, but I'm gonna talk about each slide in terms of what we're looking at. And it just kind of gives a highlight of some of the things that we were seeing as we were doing the condition assessment. So we are seeing that the gutters on the main building are starting to leak. Not huge leaks, but you can see where there's separation at the cornice, which is an indication that the copper in the gutters is starting to reach the end of its useful life. Next. And then the chimneys, which we have a couple pictures of that, but this also shows the new addition, the transition between the two is not working very well in terms of getting the water off, but the chimneys also need repointing. Next. That's a detail of that condition. A lot of moisture in that area, which is not great.
Mm.
We're also, there's a lot of areaways because of the way the building is structured, right? You've got sort of almost a banked building. So the first floor level at the front is really almost underground. And so there's a lot of moisture building up in those window wells, which the windows are wood. So you don't want that to happen because they'll eventually rot away. Next. And then the aluminum siding, which I think was done in the 60s, 70s, is starting to show its age. So this is a particularly bad location because of all the wash up from the ground. And then also the doors and the side lights are also problematic. But we're working with the engineering firm to come up with a solution to that. So.
Which engineer? Our engineer?
Your engineer.
Okay. There's a lot of those.
And then, yeah, we also have a team of engineers on our team.
Okay, good.
And then the windows, which vary in size and configuration and stuff like that, also vary in condition. So there's not one set condition for the windows. It does depend on what side of the building they are on, how close they are to the ground, that kind of stuff. But they all need a little bit of work. And we do kind of phase that in our discussions. Next. More close-up picture of the chimneys, which you can see that white, the chimneys used to be painted white. But you also see the soiling, and then the slate roof, which I thought from the ground looked okay, but then once you got up close, all that little bit of tar on top of the bitumen, and also the skylights are starting to show their age. And there is a little bit of evidence of roof leaking. You will at some point have to replace the roof. So this is the biggest concern right now, and you'll find that we're calling it priority one, but there is a structural deficiency in the roof over the auditorium. It is, next slide, I think it probably explains it better. So this is a section through what is called the scissor truss, and the bottom cord is in compression, but it really should be in tension. So it's actually wiggling in its framework. Scissor trusses are not great, but just by their nature. And what's happening is those little two squiggly marks around it, it's basically pushing the walls out below. And then the second problem is those are starting to sag. And if you go back to that other picture, you can see the sag between each of the trusses. It's a common, the purlin problem is a common problem. We've dealt with that in a number of locations. We also have dealt with truss problems. So we don't have the exact solutions just yet. We'd still have to do more calculations and stuff like that. But based on the conditions, we kind of know the direction you need to go in.
Okay, so that wouldn't require us to go to fix exactly what's there. The repair would be to do the best solution than the scissor.
So we'd keep the scissor truss in place. We would just
Shore it up.
reinforcing to kind of to change the dynamic of how that is working. So it's no longer pushing the walls out.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. And then we would reinforce the purlins to stop the sag. So one of the things that we think may have happened in the permit, it said wood shingle roof. And maybe at
Really?
some point when they were in the design, they decided to go to slate.
Slate, which
And
is a lot
slate is
heavier.
A lot heavier. So that could have been a contributing factor, but we do think the scissor truss is just inherently not a good truss system. And so that could also be a contributing factor. But I think the purlin sagging is probably due to the slate. We're not advocating going away from the slate because we think we can fix it. So,
Okay.
and changing the slate's not going to change the dynamic of what you see right now.
Right.
Next slide. Okay, so you're actually not seeing any stress. Well, we actually see the stress, and I wish Tom had taken a picture. He had hung the tape on the column on the pilaster there, and you could see the walls are like a couple inches out of plumb. But the ceiling is not showing any evidence of problems because it's actually hung from the roof. But so we will have to rehang it as part of this, but it's hung by 2x4s. So it's not the best hanging system to begin with. It should be hung really by cables. So, but we're not seeing any stress in the ceiling, which is good. And I also want to reiterate, we're not asking you to move out of the building, or it's not in danger of collapse. It just will get progressively worse if we don't.
Right.
Go on. And then this is a section of the picture of the stage, and the stage looks like a homo soap material on the existing rafters. The rafters are fine. That roof is fine. That's just starting to age, and that was sort of a sound deadening material, but because it's kind of porous, it just eventually sags and pulls away. Next. And then we've got overall, we think the finishes on the inside are actually pretty good condition. Building's well maintained. Clearly, I mean, when we're there, their guys are always cleaning and doing stuff. It's really nice to see. But you do have some wear and tear. So, you know, that is in the list. Like I said, keep going. Next slide. So the list is very long. The list is several pages long of what you need to do.
Hey, that's
It
not
is
good.
extremely detailed, But like I said, you don't have to do everything. You also don't have to do everything at once. And we do try to kind of break it down into phases, but like our biggest concerns are the structural deficiencies at the auditorium roof. We will have to re-roof eventually the whole thing, but we can do it in pieces. The building is nice enough that it's structured in pieces, so we could do the roofing in pieces. Because slate roofing is not inexpensive. Another reason why the grants are there is to kind of help you with that, offset that cost. Deal with the roof drainage system, the gutters, the leaders and things like that. Aluminum siding, get rid of the aluminum siding, restore the underlying conditions, particularly since the aluminum siding is actually reaching the end of its useful life. So, and then repairs to windows and doors, and then a couple other things on the exterior. Next slide. We do think that you should probably take another look at your trees in the front. Our landscape architect thinks that the two evergreens should go. I'm not really good at tree names, but the evergreens should be removed. And the I think it's an oak, really needs to be looked at by an arborist. And then the plantings, that, you know, that little picture I showed of the window wells, all that should be cleaned out, right? And on the interior, it's a few finishes. It's not a lot. It's mostly going to be a cyclical maintenance thing for you in terms of, you know, every 7 to 10 years, you should be budgeting for a repainting. Particularly if these spaces are well utilized, which it looks like they are. And we will also include a maintenance plan in your plan, so this way you can have that. But we sat down with the people who kind of help with the programming, and they said one of the biggest complaints is the lack of air conditioning.
Yeah, I know.
Actually, there's two big complaints: the lack of air conditioning and the migration of noise from the ballroom up to the multi-purpose spaces, because you can't actually close those doors because they're sliding doors. So for code, it's a problem.
parlor.
So we do make some recommendations for that as well.
Okay.
You can go to the next slide. So we do, oh, my number went away. Oh, there it is. We do make recommendations. So phase one, part of this is because phase one is for the structure. It's also because the windows and doors at the auditorium are in very bad condition. No, the side lights and the doors are in very bad condition. They really need to be addressed. And we will have to actually get to the walls from the outside. So taking off the aluminum siding and doing the wood siding actually kind of ties in to the structural work. So we'd have to access that anyway. What we're recommending is kind of doing everything at once. So we're not doing stuff twice. That's also a main priority when we kind of break stuff down, is we like to do a logical sequence of work. So priorities, logical sequence of work, and then break it down from there. So first phase is over $1 million that we're projecting. It is a preservation plan, so it's based on what we know as of now. Once we do the drawings, it may adjust a little bit. And then the second phase would be kind of go to the inside and focus on the use aspect of things to kind of give you what you need to be able to expand and better use the facility. And that's how actually the funding agency looks at it too. They would like structure to be dealt with first, but then really getting people into the building is actually their main priority. And then you can kind of worry about the aesthetic aspects of things. So that's a little over $1 million, and that has to do with the electrical upgrades, putting in air conditioning, and a couple other major aspects. Next. The third phase would be then to go back to the exterior, focusing on the front section of the building, doing the roof there, roof drainage system. That's about less than $1 million, about $700,000. Now, also keep in mind, if we're at phase 3, we're looking at maybe 2 to 5 years down the road, maybe even more. So you have to add money every year for that. So that number is basically just kind of now to next year. And then phase 4 would be to do the second and third floors in terms of kind of the enhancements, repairs to finishes, stuff like that. And that's about $800,000. That includes HVAC, improving lighting, improving technology. And like I said, it really is soup to nuts, but that you can prioritize within that, right? You don't have to do everything. You have made some major investments. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that, particularly in the life safety aspect of things, so that when I did the code analysis, I really didn't have too much to add.
Great.
The one thing that the HVA, the mechanical electrical plumbing engineer recommended is your fire alarm system is kind of out of date. So that needs to be invested in. The new rules for that are more integrated back to another system. I'm not that familiar with it, but it's actually in his report that is the one major recommendation they said. And then if you do add air conditioning, you will have to upgrade your electrical service.
Can I ask you a question about the HVAC?
Sure.
Because for a couple years, we were trying to figure out how to install that, whether to do it as you recommend in stages. But also there was a lot of discussion about how it's being installed and what it is like on the outside, what the equipment is like on the outside of the building, which, there was some tussling back and forth on, if we do it a certain way so that it's historically, architecturally appropriate on the exterior, the work on the inside is much more extensive. And so I think it was close to what you have for all that phase improvements it might have been not over $1 million, but it was way up there, right? It was like 800,000. Five.
So
No,
that
I
when
think
you add all our stuff
depends.
up, when you add up all those little, because we broke it down, it turns out to be about 5. So the one thing is that the auditorium, and I didn't realize this, but you actually have a forced air system there that they can tap into for that. And that's why we're saying, like, I would consider that sooner rather than later in the auditorium.
Uh-huh.
It'd be more difficult in the other spaces.
Mm.
But you want the other spaces to be zoned away from
Separately
everything anyway, because you do, like, the building's not going to be 100% used. You don't want to be cooling and heating. Well, yeah,
Oh.
heat, but you know what I mean?
Sure.
High heat in areas that they're not using. There will be a lot of equipment outside.
It will be a lot of.
There will be a lot of equipment outside.
Okay.
There's just no getting around it. Those units are getting bigger. They're not getting smaller. They got smaller and now they're back up to being big
Okay.
again.
So is there any requirement like from SHPO or whatever to hide that equipment? Or, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is a lot of the discussion around it was understanding it was at the exterior of the building and trying to make that, appropriate historically or hide it was what was driving up the cost in being able to air condition like the auditorium or the whole building.
Right. So the west side of the building is probably not the most attractive to begin with.
Right.
So I talked to our mechanical engineer and confirmed that we could put all the equipment on that side. We would have to kind of mask it somehow, but
Mhm.
that could be done simply with, like, appropriate fencing and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you break it up, right? If you break up the units, right? And you put the HVAC units for the auditorium in one spot, and then you move down a little bit and you put the other ones in another spot, then it doesn't seem so overwhelming,
Mm.
but that is a design consideration going forward. But I think the west side of the building, I'm saying the north is front, the west side of the building is probably the most appropriate.
Okay. Yeah. Because and I don't want to get into the weeds of it, but it was like because of where it was desired to have the exterior equipment required a lot of extra piping and getting around to get the inside cooled.
Right,
From
you're
that
gonna
location.
do that no matter what. So, yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, so total projected costs as of now are about just under $4 million. I always like to end on the end to make everybody happy.
Yeah, there you go.
So I mean, any other questions you have? We
You'll-
still have a little bit more to do, but most of the main meat and bones is done on the report, and we have to be done by the end of September.
Okay.
So you'll be working with us through the end of September and then beyond?
Yes, because you actually hired us to do the siding repairs, and what we'd like to do is combine, we'll add the structural work to our contract.
Okay.
And then the application for funding from the state is next April.
That's correct. So it's usually due mid-April.
And what's the time turnaround on the?
Okay, so,
So what's the
Um,
budget?
all right, so you apply in April.
Mhm.
This past April's grant applications were sent to the independent evaluators last week, meaning
Oh.
that they sat down last week and they made their recommendation. And so the announcement is next week for April's application.
Okay, so it's,
So we're thinking of 2026 capital.
Yes, because it is
And it's
actually,
a-
the governor doesn't sign the legislation until January.
Oh.
And then it takes them like 3 months to get their grant application. It is a matching grant and you do have to spend it to get it.
so
But
we have to put the money up front first.
you
and then we
do,
get-
but you can you can go, there's a quarterly report where you can reimburse your coffers. You don't have to wait until the very end of the project to get the money. But
Understood.
it is a competitive reimbursement matching grant.
Okay. I just want to see if my other colleagues, do you have any questions, Ms. Engel or Mr. Daffis?
Nope, it's nice to see that some of the recommendations are things we've been talking about for a long time, like the doors.
Siding's my
Thank you
favorite.
for that
Mr.
presentation.
Daffis, did you have anything you wanted to ask? No? Okay. I just want to say thank you, not only to you, but also to especially Daniel Wright, who's chair of HPC, and Susan Newberry, who are here, and then also just the whole HPC. I know this was something, that Susan Newberry in particular was pushing for us to do so that we could apply for the grants to help fund, because every time we tried to do a repair, it was like sticker shock in how much something was going to cost. So I just want to thank you both and the whole HPC for their work on this and getting this moving. And next April will be here before we know it. And then so will next September.
Yes, it will.
Maybe they'll go even faster. Who knows?
No, it is a
It's
set.
the-
They like it. They like it, yeah.
Okay. Well, it's just nice to know that there's some help in funding so many repairs that we have on the building.
Yes, yeah. And the grant, the maximum grant is $750,000. So that's pretty good. And
Mhm. Sure.
money that's out there. Unfortunately, there's no matching Essex County grant. Other counties actually get matched from their counties.
Hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah. Not here.
Got to move tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dickey. It's good to see you again after all these years. And does HPC, did you guys want to add anything while you're here, or you're good? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Welcome to stay for the whole meeting, but we always say that. All right, now we'll move to public comment for agenda items only. Is there anyone in the house here who would like to comment or ask questions on any agenda items? Seeing none, Mr. Wary, is there anyone online?
Anyone joining us on Zoom would like to speak in public portion, please raise your hand now. I see no hands, Mayor.
Okay. Then we have no ordinances on final passage, and we have an introduction for ordinance 3129-24, Ms. Fritzen.
Yes, Mayor. On introduction, ordinance number 3129-24 is an ordinance to amend chapter 271 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Zoning and Development Regulations. This ordinance will amend Article 8, Historic Preservation of Chapter 271 of the Township Code to modify the procedures by which applicants for demolition permits for principal structures located in residential zones are reviewed and approved.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Daffis, as Chair of the Code Committee, if you would like to explain this a little bit to the public.
Certainly, Mayor. How is my audio? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. So we've discussed this ordinance a lot at the township committee meetings, in public comment here, and in our appropriate subcommittee meetings, both in code and through engineering, planning, and public works. And the only amendment here is to remove a small provision of the demolition ordinance that we all approved and adopted previously, and that is to remove the informal review. We thought we were well-intentioned in creating a process for informal review, but then what happened is unintentionally, we realized we were creating a whole other can of worms by which property owners were reaching out to us and asking us for to see if they could engage in an informal review that would stay with the property or not stay with the property, and then they would or would not decide to move forward. And it just became all very unwieldy and something that we couldn't enforce either. So if someone wants to tear down and proceed with a demolition, at least of 50% or more of the principal structure, then this ordinance would trigger, and they would have to follow all the elements of the ordinance and seek HPC review and all the requisite permits through buildings department. There would not be an opportunity for an informal review. So they're either demolishing and putting in notice and triggering the ordinance, or they're not. And we think that this is the right way to go. We've received that input also from our township legal. Ms. Gradidio is with us, and she may add something if she likes. And I know that in Code Committee and in Engineering, Planning, and Public Works Committee, the members of the Township Committee who serve as liaisons on those committees are in favor of amending the ordinance to eliminate the informal review provision. Accordingly, we're introducing it this evening with this amendment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. DeLuca, you worked on this too. Did you want to have anything to say?
Nope, I think Mr. Daffis covered it. I'm ready to move it.
Great. Go ahead, if you'd like to move it.
I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on October 1st, 2024.
I'll second. Ms. Fritzen?
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Sengel,
Yes.
Mayor Adams.
Yes, thank you. We have reports from departments. We have the filming permit waiver. Did Ms. Fritzen, did you want to speak to this, or do you want Mr. Wary?
Myself or Mr.
Yeah, either one. I don't care.
So the permit itself came to Ms. Fritzen. She processes these as the clerk. Our code allows me as the business administrator to provide a waiver for certain portions of our filming ordinance. And there were three requests for waiver for this application. One was a reduction of insurance coverage. The second was filming in residential zones and the days and the hours of those filming. And the last was the daily fee. For the first request on insurance, I spoke with our risk manager and explained to them the limited amount of staff and equipment that are going to be in the right of way. It's really limited to just 4 cars on the street. Everything else will be in the driveway because it's a very small filming. So he had recommended reducing it to 1,000 on filming in residential zones. The applicant has notified all of their neighbors of the filming and the hours, and has given us proof that they had all responded and are in favor of moving this forward. So I recommend that be waived as well. And the daily filming fee, this is a small film operation that the filming itself is restricted to a residential home and a backyard for that resident. So very little impact to the public, to the street, right-of-way traffic. And so I recommend that we approve the 3 waiver requests for this permit application.
Okay, do you need vote
No.
from the Township Committee on this?
No, the code only asks that I consult with the Township Committee. It doesn't require any approval.
Okay, so you're consulting with us now.
Yeah, I think you might want us to support you because these things
Yeah,
always
I was-
backfire.
Just gonna say something similar.
Yeah, it requires no resolution or anything like that, but
Okay,
a voice vote.
I'll ask my colleagues if there's general agreement with Mr. Wary to grant this waiver. Mr. Daffis is nodding. So is.
So I have, 1 and 3 is fine. Number 2 is a little bit of a problem because you're saying they're gonna go beyond the normal 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, close until 11:30, right?
That's right.
So there's 4 cars, you say, but they're gonna be parking on the street. So what happens is, people get to their cars and they say, hey, good night, we'll see you tomorrow, or, oh, I forgot something, and blah, blah. So I just want you to convey to them that they're in a residential neighborhood, and when they leave, they have to respect, what's ironic, just like we had on the sign on the side of the Woodland. Remember, this is a residential neighborhood, respect the neighbor. So just something with them to reinforce that they're there, they're parking on, on the street. 11:30 at night on Maplewood Avenue is pretty, it's loud when you're out talking because it's quiet there, and when you hear it. So that's the only concern I have. Otherwise, I'm fine with the whole
I'll
thing.
relay that to them.
So tell them not to be noisy, no yelling and screaming at each other. Okay. I'm fine with it as well. So thank you for that.
Yes.
You need, yeah, I thought you were asking for a vote. I'm like, we just said we didn't need one. Okay, we'll stay with you, Mr. Wary, and go to administrative report.
I have no report tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Any questions for Mr. Wary? Anybody got anything? Mr. Daffis, you good? Okay. Ms. Credidio? Wow, okay. Any questions for our attorney? No, okay. Ms. Fritzen? You have a report. Don't let us down. Go ahead.
Okay, quickly, just a few things, that I just want to, bring awareness to the public and also to the Township Committee that we have prepared our, customary informational election flyer, which is, on the website. And, we're getting a lot of calls, obviously, for people that want to make sure that they're registered to vote for the, presidential election. And I will say, there's still plenty of time. You have until October 15th to register to vote. And actually, the clerk's office will be open, but you'll get a reminder on this straight through to 9 p.m. on the 15th, which we do routinely for elections. So again, that information is up and available for the public.
Okay.
I also wanted to report that the date is set. It's a definite. How much we appreciate our volunteers in Maplewood for everything that they do. The volunteer appreciation dinner will be on Monday, October 21st, as I had alluded to 2 weeks ago. And information will be going out to all of our boards and committees, volunteers. And again, it's the Township Committee's way of thanking all of the numerous volunteers, 2 of them right here in the room, for all that they do for Maplewood. And I know I sound like a broken record, but starting tomorrow, we are having event planning meetings, 2 tomorrow and 2 on Thursday. So there's a lot of activities going on.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Fritzen? I see none. All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Fritzen. We'll move to discussion. Oh, sorry, I always like to skip over us. Committee Member Engel.
Thank you, Mayor. I only have one thing. I'm so excited. I learned today that the Follies are coming back. The Follies Talent Show is coming back to the Woodlands, and our residents should get ready for their auditions. So auditions will take place on Wednesday, October 9th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Woodlands. Bring 1 to 3 minutes of a song, comedy, dance, drag, variety, or circus routine, etc., with neighbors, coworkers, family, or friends. Anything goes, from the wonderfully expected to the weirdly wacky and unpredictable. And then the show date, save the date, will be Thursday, November 21st from 7:30 to 9 p.m. at the Woodlands. That's my report.
That was super fun last year, so Yeah, that's cool. Any questions for committee member Engel? I see none. So we'll move to Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few items and then I have a comment. I just wanted to give congratulations for the employee lunch. I thought it was great. We had that. Anyway, was fun. I think we have to get better at our trivia answers.
We have to get better.
Our trivia,
And
our
name
answers
that
to the
tune.
trivia questions.
And the name that tune portion
I
of
haven't
it.
named that
Yeah,
tune.
that
So
would
if
get
we
rid
could
of the
work
name.
on that, maybe.
Yeah, no name that tune this
yeah.
time.
So that was that, but
took
it was a
too
very
long.
nice event, and it was whoever came up with the idea of having it at the Avenue Pub. It was
I
a
think it was
good.
Mr.
Is it-
Starzinski.
Committee, Mr. DeLuca, and we have a lot of young employees that are on the core committee. They had some great ideas and they, they sold them to us. And we tried it and I think everyone agrees it had great attendance. We had 100 people.
Mhm.
Thank you. I will express that to the core committee.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Although I don't think you should be allowed to play anymore, but that's okay. This Saturday, the 21st, at the Lightning Brook, we're going to be doing a cleanup. That's the Environmental Advisory Committee in partnership with the Hilton Neighborhood Association. It's from 10 a.m. to 12. We'll be at Jacoby Street, the Rotary Park. It's 74 Jacoby Street if you want to Google us or check it out. You'll be getting wet and you'll be getting dirty. So bring clothes and shoes that you can do
Wear
that in.
clothes and shoes,
Yeah,
don't
wear. Yeah, don't bring. Well, you can change into them if you want. And then Wednesday, October 25th, 7:30 p.m. at the Woodland, the library is doing the annual literary award, and this is part of a abbreviated Ideas Festival this year because we're still waiting for the library. And I did want to make a statement, if I can, Mayor, and really just talking a little bit about what's been happening in the country. And,
Same.
no matter who you support for president or what party you belong to, I think we all agree that we have to call out political violence that we've seen in this campaign. We had an attempted assassination of the former president. This was the second time. And we must speak out against violence. And we need to ban these assault weapons that are being used. But we cannot allow bullets to replace ballots. They can never be a substitute. We have to get out there, and if we don't like something, we need to vote that out. So I think it's important that we talk about political violence and say it's wrong and it's not who we are as Americans. Although our history is full of it, we have to stop it. We also have to stop the political violence that's based on lies and rhetoric in the campaign, and the lies and rhetoric that have targeted the Haitian community
Mhm.
in Springfield, Ohio, and across the country. We're seeing bomb threats, we're seeing schools closed, hospitals closed. Classes are being virtual because people are afraid to send their children to the schools. Municipal buildings are closed. The governor, the mayor, city manager, the police are all saying these are not substantiated allegations, and yet they continue, and the Haitian community has a target put on them,
Mhm.
and that's political violence too. They even had to cancel a multicultural celebration, the celebration that we in this town respect and hold very dearly when we celebrate the very different cultures we have
Mhm.
in our community. So it's wrong, and I think we all join in supporting the Haitian community right here in Maplewood and in Essex County. We stand with you, just like we've stood with other groups that are being challenged and being targeted. And so this has to stop. We have to stop targeting Haitians and other immigrant groups. And we have to get on with the business of keeping our country together, not divided. So I think political violence has to stop. We can't use bullets. Let's use ballots. And we can't target. Let's embrace. And I think you all will join me in standing up with our Haitian brothers and sisters.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt, not to speak for my colleagues, but I can't imagine there's a bit of disagreement with what you just said. We've all been watching it as we worry about not just Haitians, but people of color who are being lumped in, and the race baiting that's going on is really sad for our country. So hopefully we can move past that. Anybody have any questions for Mr. DeLuca? Mr. Daffis?
Thank you, Mayor.
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. My audio has been a little bit spotty. I want to say that we all join indeed with our Haitian brothers and sisters everywhere in our country, in Haiti. And I've been thinking about our Haitian community here in Maplewood these past few days since the racist and hateful rhetoric has been spewing before us in public, on TV and social media, and so on and so forth. Hate's never the answer. Violence is never the answer. As Mr. DeLuca said so eloquently, the answer is always at the ballot box. So we have to do everything that we can to get out the vote and to encourage people to raise their voices with their ballot this November 5th. It is so absolutely critical. I'm not there with you in person this evening because I am in Atlantic City at the annual Governor's Conference on Housing and Economic Development. In terms of a report this evening, I just want to make a comment. You all have already highlighted some of the things I was going to highlight as part of my report. We are down here to talk about housing and economic development. How will New Jersey deal with the affordability crisis? How will New Jersey innovate in economic development for small business and big business and diverse business? And I have to say, I am really proud of our little town of Maplewood. Some of the things that are being discussed down here today and tomorrow as it relates to affordable housing, Maplewood has been already doing even before this new law that was recently adopted because of the great work of people like the leadership, I should say, of people like Committeeman, former Mayor DeLuca, and our very active, hardworking Affordable Housing Board, which I've had the honor of joining recently and working alongside. We have already adopted accessory dwelling units, which the state is looking to adopt statewide, and to put out millions of dollars to help localities with accessory dwelling units. It is in some communities like ours, very expensive still without state incentives and state aid to put on an addition on your garage or to convert it into an accessory dwelling unit for a renter, for a family member, and so on and so forth. Maplewood has already adopted home sharing. Maplewood has already adopted aging in place opportunities. Maplewood is already an age-friendly community in terms of keeping our seniors and finding ways to combat the increase in everyday household expenses for those who are on a very fixed income. Mr. DeLuca will be discussing where we're going next with our RFP that we put out there to developers to invite them to propose an affordable housing proposal that would be appropriate for Maplewood. We're really excited about moving that forward. And I'm so glad and proud that we are a community that has not run away from Mount Laurel, but leaned into it and embraced the morality of offering affordable, inclusive opportunities for housing in our community where all can live and play and work, not just a few. So that's my comment tonight. That's my report. That's my cheerleading us on to continue doing the difficult, politically difficult many times, work of being an inclusive, forward-thinking, innovative, and progressive community for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Any questions for Mr. Daffis? Okay, I just have a brief report in agreement with everybody else, what everybody said, looking forward to the Follies. I forgot it was coming up. I'm not auditioning. I just want to invite everyone, the community, particularly kids and kids in sports clubs or kids in art clubs, doesn't matter. We have a celebration of our Olympic gold medalists this Saturday on Jerry Ryan Plaza, right in front of Town Hall at 4 p.m. We figure this was a good time because after sports and before you go out at night. So hopefully you can join us for 4 p.m. where we'll recognize gold medalist Jackie Dubrovich. We'll also be separately recognizing the New Jersey Fencing Alliance and their continued success in training and turning out some, the highest class of athletes with this will be the second Olympian from NJFA. So we will be recognizing them. And we'll also be doing a flag raising, Olympic flag raising, and our Olympian will do some photos with everybody. And then she and her fiance, who is also her coach and also grew up in Maplewood, fenced for Columbia High School and fenced for Harvard, I think, maybe Princeton, but I know it's competitive, but I forget which. But he was a professional fencer as well and is now her coach. They're going to do a little demo for us, a little fencing demo, so the kids can have some fun. It won't be a long all-day thing, so it'll probably be about an hour. So we encourage everybody to just come out and meet our Olympian and say congratulations to her. Other than that, I'm going to end my report right there and just ask for any questions for me.
Mayor, you're going to announce the community meeting on the 24th.
That was the other thing I knew I was forgetting. See, that's why you're here. Got to remind me. Yes, we have movie theater redevelopment, open public meeting for public comment and input and questions and suggestions for the movie theater redevelopment area. Mr. Wary, you released, and it's on our website, the current draft of the redevelopment plan. So we ask you to take a look at it and come out to the Woodland at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, September 24th. And we'll see if we can get this, finally bring in all the input and get it to the finish line. It'll come back to the Township Committee after any revisions from the community meeting. The Township Committee will discuss it, and if it chooses to pass it as an ordinance, it will then go to the planning board and then come back to the Township Committee. So that's the process, and a lot depends on what happens Tuesday night at the Woodland. So come and bring your suggestions, and it's helpful if you read up on it ahead of time so you know what's already in there. Oh, and it was already reading it right here at our meeting. So that is my report. Thank you for the reminder, Mr.
That's why I'm here.
I know. But now you're here for 3 other discussion items.
That too.
Okay, the top condominium we've been
So the
talking about.
top condominium is pretty simple. We had a number of residents and management come to our Engineering, Public Works and Planning Committee meeting, asking us for some assistance. They have a difficulty exiting their garage parking lot because of the speed and the coming on South Orange Avenue. And when cars are parked in front of their building on South Orange Avenue, they can't see. So they've asked us to prohibit parking. We did talk to the county. It is a county road. The county is in favor of it. They've actually striped that area, but now we need to have an ordinance that prohibits parking. So Ms. Credidio drafted an ordinance with the assistance of the engineer to give you dimensions, and everything looks fine, and everyone has agreed to move forward. So if we're still in agreement, we can put it on for next meeting.
I am in agreement. And
Yes, I'm
Mr.
in
Davis
agreement.
is thumbs up.
Okay,
So it'll be on for first reading at our next meeting, October 1st.
correct.
Next, discussion item, establishment of Maplewood Stormwater Utility.
Right. So I have a little, just a little statement just to lay out what we're trying to do here. So about 130 years ago, R.S. Sinclair of South Orange, Maplewood, when we were one community, proposed a major infrastructure plan to address sanitary sewage. And that resulted in the creation of the joint meeting. And now that has a dozen municipalities that collectively handle sewage waste. And today we have the opportunity to again invest in our infrastructure, this time with our storm sewer system, so that we're better able to handle the flooding, which has become more frequent as a result of climate change. So the establishment of a stormwater utility will provide the township with a regular pool of funds to undertake drainage improvements on an annual basis. The utility will be funded by a yearly fee on residential property ranging from $35 to $175 based on the amount of impervious surface on your property. Commercial properties will also be included based on an impervious coverage formula. The fees will only be used for the utility, and they will not be put into the general fund. It will be a locked box with those fees dedicated for drainage projects like those on Maple Terrace, Kendall Avenue, Burnett Terrace and Ivy Place, Porter Road, Meadowbrook, and Tiffany Place. Based upon the rates that I mentioned, the township will collect nearly $900,000 a year to use for storm drainage projects. We envision adding the stormwater fee to the current sanitary sewer fee. There will be a process to receive credits for undertaking stormwater management practices on your property, such as installing a rain garden or putting in a retention basin on your property. Maplewood will be the second municipality in the state after the city of New Brunswick. We would be the first suburban town, but I assure you that more will follow because every municipality is trying to figure out how to deal with their stormwater. The water is just coming faster in these rains. It's more intense, and we're not able to get the water off the street with our current system. So tonight, what we're being asked is to authorize the drafting of a stormwater utility ordinance and to begin engaging the community in this discussion. Our engineers recommend that we move forward, as does the Engineering, Public Works, and Planning Committee. And that's my statement.
Thank
And
you,
we-
Mr.
And I'm
DeLuca.
sorry, we did get a report from Arcadis, and we did have Arcadis here to do a presentation,
A couple months ago.
a couple months ago.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that. Nobody, I don't think any of us is in favor of putting another fee on our residents. But the problem with just trying to budget for it every year, as you pointed out a couple times in your statement, which this would be a dedicated funding source for these improvements and wouldn't get pushed off into, oh, there's other things of higher priority or any future governing body deciding not to fund improvements to the stormwater system. But we, at least I and Mr. DeLuca, we've been talking about this for a couple of years. Think it's vitally important that we need to address this. I mean, ultimately, we'd like to be able to get reimbursed eventually by it if the state prevails along with other states in their lawsuit against fossil fuel industry for knowingly causing climate change. So maybe down the road, we'll start getting some payback for that. But right now, we can't let our properties get flooded. We can't, put our residents in harm's way. And the only way we're going to do it is to fix the infrastructure. And the only way we can ensure that that's being done year after year is to have a dedicated pool of funds for that. So I open the floor to Mr. Daffis or Ms. Engel.
I'll just say that I am also in support of it. I agree with what you said, Mayor, about we don't want to impose more fees on our residents, but the world is changing, climate change is happening, infrastructure is aging, and we need to be able to keep our residents safe and our streets safe from water and manage the water. And it's just new territory that we're in. So I am in support of this.
Okay, Mr. Daffis.
I agree with everything that's been said, and I wholeheartedly support this as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
So,
so we will start working on an ordinance. We have a draft from New Brunswick, and we can always use what they wrote
or we can make it
and make
better.
it better.
Okay, Mr. DeLuca, you have affordable housing partnership with Ingerman.
Yes. So on May 15th, we received 10 submissions to the township's request for expression of interest in developing affordable housing in Maplewood. These are 10 developers. All of them were for-profit developers. We had submitted our RFEI to about 40 for-profit and nonprofit developers. And as I said, 10 did submit. The Affordable Housing Board reviewed all 10 and ranked them. And from that list of 10, we selected 4 to be interviewed. And tonight, the Affordable Housing Board is recommending that we work with Ingerman as a partner to construct 40 units of affordable housing in Maplewood. We don't have the sites yet. That is part of the process. We would engage in that partnership with Ingerman to identify sites around town. I mean, it's very difficult because property is expensive and we're just not making more of it. The land is what it is. So
But adaptive reuse could be.
it could be. There could be a lot of things. We could look at above certain things, some public buildings we have and things like that. So, and the good thing is that Ingerman covers the pre-development costs.
Oh.
So they handle all that. So they would work with that, and that was a real attraction to us. So and that they would be responsible for going after the funding from the state. We're looking to get some high quality affordable housing tax credits. So as Mr. Daffis was talking about, this is exactly what the state wants municipalities to do. And with the new round of affordable housing regulations coming out and a new number that we're going to have to meet, we want to be ahead and we want to be progressive and proactive. So what we're asking tonight is if the Township Committee could authorize Mr. Weary and Ms. De Palma to negotiate an affordable housing agreement with Ingerman, spelling out the responsibilities of each party during this partnership. And then that agreement would come back to us for our approval. And once we approve that, then the partnership would start and we would work with them and start looking at potential sites and start talking to property owners and seeing what is possible.
Yeah, while other municipalities are running away from their affordable housing obligation, continuing to do so still, I think, I think those of us up here on the governing body at this time are very much in favor of doing what we can to try to create affordable housing, understanding some of the difficulties that come with that. But so I'm in favor of approving Mr. Weary and Mr. Palma to work with Ingerman.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Okay, Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Yes?
Okay.
All right, Mr. Daffis, keep your mic on. You're up next for the food truck discussion item.
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor. So this is a proposal that came out of the Code Committee. It's a doing business better proposal. It's a efficiency in government proposal. And it relates to food trucks and their permits. So the way it works when a food truck wants to be part of an event that we do in town, and certainly we do a lot of awesome events throughout the year, they apply for a permit. And that permit tends to be for that event, for that day. The permit triggers two permits, actually. And we can look at this in the future, perhaps, making it even easier and more efficient. But for now, the food truck is required to go through a health permit and inspection by the Department of Health for obvious reasons, food safety, sanitation, all that good stuff, but also a fire permit, especially if they're going to be cooking in the food truck. And so many food trucks these days are very high gourmand and they do a lot of cooking in there, right? So you're required to get the health permit, you're required to get the fire permit. The fire permit, it also requires a fire inspection for fire safety. And you pay a fee. On the fire side, it's $55 per event. On the health side, it's $20 per event, I believe, or $25, excuse me, per event. So we were looking, we have certain food truck businesses that are very friendly to our town, meaning that they come throughout the year to different events. So we were looking at ways to make it a little bit easier on them and on us to basically looking at an annual permit. So you would apply to come to Maplewood at whatever events you want to come to for the calendar year in 2025, let's say, and you would pay an annual permit. You would still be required to go through the fire inspection with each respective event. That's just state law, right? Can't change that. On the health side, the Department of Health is only required to inspect you once. And so we came up with the fees that are in the ordinance that's been circulated to the public and proposed to the Township Committee tonight. An annual permit on by the Department of Health would be $100 for the year, calendar year we're talking about. And on the fire inspection and permit side would be 220. Now, I will say that when we discussed this and received very good input and research from our fire inspection director, official, the recommendation was 250 on the fire side. And that's because, as I just, I explained, you have to have the fire inspection, even with an annual permit. On the health side, you only have to inspect once. So the fee, we could either keep 220 and 100 to align the fees and make them similar, or we can charge a little bit extra because it requires a fire inspection with each event, annual permit notwithstanding.
Right.
So that is where we are. And so the proposal that administration and Township legal attorney Gradidio has put forth recommends 220 annual permit for fire and $100 annual permit for health. I invite our township attorney to add any more details and context.
Gradidio, you have anything to add other than what I'm going to disagree with? No. We talked numerous times and Bob Conklin, our fire code official, recommended 250. The code committee agreed with 250. And I think it's a reasonable amount for the every time they use it. So it still will save a food truck that cooks in town regularly at several events. It'll still save them. It'll save the administrative part of it, but the inspection still does indeed have to happen. So I would go with our fire code officials recommendation of 250, and that was the consensus on the code committee. If you guys are okay with that.
I'm okay with it. I agree with annual fees and the annual health inspection because having produced food truck festivals before,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these trucks are already operating here all the time anyway. So
Makes it a little, yeah, it streamlines it a little bit. Mr. Doolittle?
I'm good.
Okay.
And
All
I'm
right,
good
thank
to-
you, Mr. Dappas.
Yep.
You're good with 250, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okey doke. So we'll put that on for first reading at the next to codify that health annual, and that's it. So now we have the consent agenda. I asked for a motion.
I move the consent agenda.
Second,
Okay,
Luca,
Yes.
Ms. Engel,
yes.
Mayor Adams.
yes, thank you. We come to public comment on any subject matter. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak to the Township Committee? Anyone online? Mr. Worry.
If any member of the public joining us on Zoom would like to speak on any topic, please raise your hand now. I see no hands, Mayor.
Okay,
Mr. Weary, can we check and see if Mr. McCreer is here?
He is not.
He's not. Okay,
okay.
thank you.
Mr. DeLuca, motion to.
I move we adjourn.
Second,
Mr. Luca,
Yes.
Ms. Engel.
yes.
Mayor Adams.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Committee Member Daffis.